Okay, today we're going to cover supply management audits. Analyze and resolve issues raised in supply management audit reports. The task. Types of audits. So audits gauge compliance with a given standard, usually your internal procedures or policies. So internal audits, self-inspection, use of an auditor within the department that is vested in the outcome. So purchasing would have its own auditor, probably an additional duty. Internal audit, conducted by company personnel that have no vested interest in the outcome. This is the internal audit group. Disadvantages include difficulty in finding qualified auditors with technical or audit expertise. And the differences found by comparing self-assessments with those of the audit give a good indication of areas where purchasing may be complacent. So it's interesting to compare your internal self-inspections with the audit group's findings. Companies abide by GAAP, which is the generally accepted accounting principles, established by FASB, which is the U.S. Financial Accounting Standards Board, when conducting internal audits. And for purchasing, GAAP doesn't really get involved that much. It's more, are we following our procedures? External audits. Performed when a company hires an outside organization to conduct the audit. So advantages are if the auditor is trained and the audit report will be taken seriously and the auditor has no vested interest in the outcome, other than the fact that he wants to get paid again. Disadvantages are the cost and time to educate the auditors about the company. External audits in the U.S. must follow generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP, and the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002. Practices that govern, GAAP is practices that govern financial accounting standards, which is FASB puts out. It's what all the financial statements have to follow. Financial audit determines whether the company's financial statements are prepared in accordance with GAAP. That's what the external auditor does with our accounting folks every year. Did we prepare our financial statements in accordance with GAAP? That's usually not part of a purchasing audit. Auditor must issue an opinion on the accuracy and fairness of the financial statements, and it's usually a written opinion that's filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Supply management must also ensure that suppliers comply with GAAP. Not really. That's a little over the top. International suppliers often comply with International Finance Reporting Standards, or IFRS, instead of GAAP. But it's a voluntary thing. SOX, or Sarbanes-Oxley law, was enacted in 2002 due to the Enron fraud, and Arthur Anderson, who was their accounting external auditor, basically whitewashed everything for them and let them get away with fraud. The law requires internal financial controls to provide assurance of the reliability of financial reporting and preparation of financial statements. This all came from the CEO of Enron saying, well, I didn't know, I know I signed them, but I didn't know what was going on. So the law is kind of designed so the CEO can't say he doesn't know what's going on. Requires all publicly traded corporations to submit reports to the SEC, and companies must establish fully independent audit committees. You can't be putting all your vice presidents on the board to do your bidding. A minimum of 1 year must pass before an audit committee member can be hired as this one of the C-suite guys. Companies may not extend loan to directors or corporate officers. Now, these are public companies. Private companies can do whatever they want. Annual internal control reports must be produced, and companies must disclose information regarding material changes. And whistleblower protection must be provided. And Section 401 of SOX law requires reporting on business transactions such as receipt or payment of slotting fees, which are fees charged by companies like supermarkets in order to have their products placed on their shelves. Promotional allowances, supplier managed inventories, guaranteed contracts, long-term volume purchase agreements, take or pay commitments. So take or pay, a company either takes the product from the supplier or pays the supplier a penalty. All of these things are basically financial liabilities that are hanging over the company that they have to disclose. Section 404 of the SOX law. Copies of documents used in negotiation of purchasing must be kept, such as purchase orders, bids and contracts, internal company memos, emails, criteria. PACCAR records retention policy says we'll keep these documents for 5 years. I think it's actually 7 years. And ISO audits used to determine compliance with quality management. Several different types of ISO audits. Quality management system is 901. 908 is the quality system itself. 14,000 is environmental protection. And the validation of current policies, procedures, work instructions, and forms. The reasons for an audit can have several purposes. Audit is an after-the-fact control. Remember that. Proper monetary limits, are they being adhered to? Appropriate personnel conducting transactions, their division of labor, supplier references and performance records being checked, items not have been received, followed up on, competition requirements being met, how good was the forecast volume, prompt payment, best transportation methods, supplier meeting contractual requirements. These are all things that an audit can look at. So the corrective action process, CAP, or corrective action report, CAR, establishment of timeframes, prioritization, cost benefit analysis, implementation, and validation. I'll go over each of these steps. Audit reports present findings, which are conclusions that are representations of fact. So that's what an audit report does. It says this procedure was not followed on this step and this step. There's no mention of blame, and measurement is to a standard. A plan or corrective action is then formed to correct the findings. Also commonly referred to as a corrective action report or a CAR. That's mostly what you'll hear out in the industry is a CAR. PACCAR calls their CAR system the FRACUS because we can't just call it what everybody else calls it. We gotta be something different. FRACUS stands for the Failure Reporting and Corrective Action System. 5-step process. That goes back to this. So establishment of timeframes. Timeframe for the corrective action needs to be established. Usually it takes the form of a final due date. Plan needs to address the root cause of the problem. Prioritization, step 2, steps in the plan need to be prioritized along with an understanding of the resources needed for the plan. And then the cost benefit analysis. Corrective action must be cost effective. So the expected benefits got to be more than the cost to look at it. So the cure has got to be better than the disease. Implementation, once it has been determined that a corrective actions is cost effective, steps to implement it need to be taken. So stop dates, assign tasks, advise relevant stakeholders, and monitor to ensure compliance. And then validation is the last step. After a preset amount of time has passed, progress of the corrective action activity should be reviewed. You can do this by comparing progress against standards. You need to ensure the corrective action has resolved the issue found in the audit. Has it fixed the root cause? And validation uses the PDCA cycle, which is Plan, Do, Check, Act. Audit schedules and reports. An auditor's report is a formal opinion issued by the auditor. Depending on the type of audit, the schedules will vary. The financial audit will include financial statements and accompanying notes. All right. All of the following are requirements of the Sarbanes-Oxley's Act of 2002, except, oh, Henry, you are on. Okay. So Sarbanes-Oxley, Sarbanes-Oxley, or SOX. What one doesn't belong? Creation of a public company accounting oversight board. It's the acronym. That's part of it. Certification of financial reports by company chief executive officer. That's the whole reason for the law. Establishment of an independent audit committee to oversee the relationship. That's part of it. Audit of supplier relationships. That I would say is not a part of SOX. Let's see what these guys have to say. D, yeah, not a requirement. Oops. All right. Which of the following best defines the corrective action process to put in place to resolve problems identified in a supply management audit? Defines the corrective action process. Oh, so these are the 5 steps, I think. It doesn't even have all of the 5 steps. So the first step I recall is establishing timeframes, and anyone that does that is C. And that's step 2, and then that's step 3. And then 4 would be implement, and 5 would be validate. So I would go with C on this one. See what these guys want to do. C it is. And again, just by looking and remembering one, the beginning, that's the only one that has it. That one was easy. All right, there are 7 questions out there. So why don't you go ahead and jump on them and then raise your hand when you get done, or we'll pick up at 3:50. I'm just gonna finish some questions here. Number 1 is Charlie. An audit can be defined as a comprehensive periodic examination of an organization's supply management activities. I like Delta better. While an audit is an after-the-fact control, it focuses more on adherence to policies and procedures than on achievement of business performance goals. That's kind of a stupid answer, okay? 2 is Delta. Audits are internally focused and do not directly deal with sourcing decisions. 3 is Alpha. Focusing on data helps to problem solve non-defensively. 4 is Bravo. Placement of the management team as a result of an audit would only occur in the most drastic of circumstances. 5 is also Bravo. The inspection function is normally a classic part of quality control, not part of supply management audit. 6 is Delta. Looking at where the supply management department thinks there are problems and where an auditor thinks there are problems can reveal areas that the supply management is overlooking. And 7 is Bravo. Long-term agreement is necessary due to the complexity and initial costs of implementing these processes. And you got to report the time phase obligations as part of SOX. Any questions? All right. We got another one tomorrow.
Thanks, Rick.
All right. See you, Henry.